Today, we are going to unpack one of the most common electrolyte imbalances out there, hypokalemia, low potassium. It might sound kind of basic, but this condition is a silent risk that can have some really serious consequences for your heart and muscles. So let's dive right in. Well, the answer, believe it or not, is all about potassium. This mineral is an absolute rock star when it comes to the electrical signals that run our bodies, especially our hearts. And when those potassium levels drop too low, the whole system can start to short circuit. Okay, so first things first, let's get a really clear definition of what we're actually talking about when we say hypokalemia. Simply put, you've got hypokalemia when the potassium level in your blood dips below 3.5. Now, even though it's the most common electrolyte problem you'll see in hospitals, the scary part is that even a small drop can raise the risk of a serious cardiac event. And to really get why this matters, you have to know this incredible fact. A whopping 98% of your body's potassium is tucked away inside your cells. So that diagnosis, it's based on the tiny 2% floating around in your blood. That's why even a small change in that little amount can have such a massive, outsized impact on how your nerves and muscles work. So, as you can see, we classify it by how severe it is, from mild to moderate, all the way down to severe. But here's the really snaky part. In that mild stage, a lot of patients have absolutely no symptoms. The real danger signs and those classic ECG changes, they often don't show up until the potassium has already dropped into that moderate zone. So what's the big deal? Why is low potassium so dangerous? Let's take a look at the symptoms and what they're telling us. You can see how the danger just ramps up. Mild, you might not notice a thing, but once you dip below 3.0, you start feeling that general weakness, muscle aches, even constipation, because the smooth muscles in your gut start to slow down. And then when you get to severe cases, below 2.5, we're talking about profound weakness that can actually lead to paralysis and even respiratory failure if the muscles you need to breathe are affected. The most life-threatening risks, without a doubt, are to the heart. See, what happens is that low potassium makes the heart muscle electrically unstable, or hyperexcitable. This just paves the way for terrifying arrhythmias like VT and VF, which can cause sudden cardiac death. And beyond the heart, it can cause your muscles to literally break down, a condition called rhabdomyolysis. So, how do we actually see this electrical instability? Well, the ECG is our window. It gives us a direct, real-time look into the heart's electrical state, and it is an absolutely critical tool here. When you're looking at an ECG for a patient with low potassium, you're looking for a very specific pattern. You'll start to see ST segments getting depressed all over the place. The T waves, they'll start to flatten out or even flip upside down. And most famously, this thing called a U wave pops up. It can even make it look like you have a long QT interval, but really it's that T wave merging with the new U wave. I absolutely love this push-pull analogy. It just makes so much sense. Think of it like this. Low potassium, hypokalemia, is literally pushing down on that T wave, making it flat and revealing the U wave behind it. On the flip side, high potassium, hyperkalemia, does the exact opposite. It pulls the T wave up, creating those classic, tall, pointy T waves. It's such a great visual clue. And this isn't just theory. This is from a real case where the patient's ECG was showing all those classic signs. And their potassium level, it was a critically low 1.7. That is deep, deep in the severe category, and it just shows you how profoundly this one electrolyte can mess with the heart's entire electrical system. Okay, so once we've identified that a patient has hypokalemia, the detective work begins. The next crucial question is why? Where did all the potassium go? Generally, the causes fall into three main buckets. First, and by far the most common, is just losing too much of it. This usually happens through the kidneys because of diuretics or through the GI tract from bad diarrhea or vomiting. Second, you have what's called a transcellular shift. This is where potassium moves out of the blood and into the cells, often triggered by things like insulin or even certain asthma meds. And finally, you have decreased intake, which is less common but can happen. Now, here's a really neat clinical trick to help with the detective work. Just check the patient's blood pressure. If they have low potassium and high blood pressure, your mind should start thinking about endocrine problems like Conn's or Cushing's. But if their blood pressure is normal or low, then you're probably looking at something like diuretic use or GI losses. It's a great clue. All right, so we've defined it, we've seen the dangers, and we've figured out the likely cause. Now let's talk about the most important part. How do we fix it? The goal here is pretty straightforward. We want to get that serum potassium level back up into the sweet spot, which is between 4 and 5. Having it in that range gives you a nice safety buffer and really helps stabilize the heart muscle against those dangerous arrhythmias. So how do we do it? For mild to moderate cases, giving it orally is the way to go, either with potassium-rich foods or supplements. But for severe cases, or if someone just can't take anything by mouth, we have to use an IV. And I cannot stress this enough. IV potassium must be infused slowly. Giving it as a rapid push can cause instant cardiac arrest. It is incredibly dangerous. And let me leave you with 2 essential pro tips for managing this. First, low potassium and low magnesium are best friends. They almost always show up together. In fact, if you don't fix the low magnesium, the kidneys will just keep wasting potassium and you'll never correct the problem. So rule number 1 is always check and correct the magnesium. It's standard practice to replace both to get the heart stable. So it all comes back to this amazing question. Isn't it incredible that a condition that can literally cause sudden cardiac death can often be solved just by restoring a simple mineral balance? It's just a powerful reminder of that delicate, invisible chemical dance that's keeping all of us running every single second of the day.